I gotta show you all of you kids to make fresh pasta at home.
All right, yeah, we're gonna make some fresh pasta today because what are we making? We're making a lasagna for who?
Nana!
You're making a lasagna for Nana. So yesterday we showed you how to make your own ricotta cheese to go in the lasagna. And today we're going to show you how to make and roll out your fresh pasta sheets at home.
Yeah.
Let's get cooking. All right, so it's time to start making our dough for the fresh pasta noodles. Now, I think I've mentioned this dough before in another video when I showed you all how I make my pizza dough. But again, this came from the brick oven baker. Last time I was using pizza flour that was double O. It's called, that was Antimo Caputo. This flour is a little bit different consistency. It's specifically for pasta and gnocchi. And it's called Mulino Caputo. And so it is just a little bit different of a texture. Like these flours are really fine, kind of like you sifted them, but they're not airy. Like you can rub them in between your fingers and they're kind of grainy. And so the idea is that there's more gluten in them and you can get a better pasta, whatever you're making, out of it. And so that's what we're going to use today. Now, you could also use a little bit of like the yellow semolina in here, half and half. I don't have enough to do half semolina today, so I'm just going to do this flour, but sometimes I'll do half and half. The semolina just adds a little bit more of a chew to the noodle, so it kind of depends on what I'm making. So let's get started. All right, Lexi, here's the first thing we're going to do. We are going to take the bowl of our mixer, our mixing bowl that goes on my stand mixer, and we are going to measure out 2 cups of flour into this bowl, okay? So let's roll up your sleeves.
Yeah, so I won't.
Don't want to get any flour on your sleeves.
Yeah, because the pizza.
So we're going to go down in here, okay? And we're going to scoop it out. And we kind of leveled it off, and that is just about a cup. So you're going to put 1 cup in there.
And
2 cups.
One,
Very good.
Look, I got some flour on my hand.
You sure did. Now this recipe is not my recipe. This is actually Gordon Ramsay's recipe. He, Michelin star chef. I think he knows what he's doing. I've also used the French laundry recipe in the past. Some recipes are more specifically made for American all-purpose flour, and some are more made for this flour. You could totally use all-purpose flour if that's all you had. It's just the texture may not be as authentic. That's the difference. And so if you can find a recipe that specifically calls for all-purpose flour, that means that person has tested it and tried it out, and they know what works to make pasta with AP flour. I just like to use the authentic stuff. If you would like to get your authentic flour, I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but this is where you go, Brick Oven Baker. They sent me this little thing the last time I got the flour, and you don't necessarily have to order directly from their site. You can get it from Walmart.com. I've ordered it on there. I think they probably also have it on Amazon. So let's put this off to the side.
Yeah.
Now, once you have your flour in the bowl,
A little hole.
that's right. So we're gonna take our spatula and we are gonna make a little hole in the center, like a well. So basically all the liquid ingredients are going to go inside there. Now Gordon, being the Michelin star chef that he does this, you know, by hand on a clean work surface. But unfortunately, we just don't have that kind of time, and it's really messy. I've done it in the past, and I'll eventually show Lexi how to do that. But it's just easier to make a hole in the center. You gonna hold that for me? Okay. Now, once you've got your hole made in the center, you want it nice and big, we're going to dump what we need in there. Now, if you use the French laundry recipe, it's like just egg yolks and maybe like a whole egg or something, and that's it, nothing else. But besides like salt for seasoning. But Gordon's recipe actually calls for a little bit of oil, and I like that better because I tend to have issues with my dough being a little dry and then having to add some water. So this olive oil, just for the climate and the humidity of where we're at in Illinois, it's just, I find I get a better consistency of my dough if there's a little bit of olive oil. So you can kind of just find the recipe that works for you, but this is what works for me here. So you're going to take and dump this. This is just not even quite a teaspoon of salt. You don't want it to be too salty. You can always go back in and add some later, but you can't take it out. So we're going to add salt. And then you can measure this, but we're barely just going to pour in a little bit of olive oil, okay? Not even it calls for a teaspoon of olive oil, so we're just going to do a little tiny bit, okay?
Yeah.
All right, you going to help me?
And we use this for my pasta as well.
Yes, Lexi is mentioning that we use this olive oil for her pasta. I always put, when I make pasta, I put olive oil in the water to keep it from sticking. And I feel like maybe it adds a little bit of flavor.
From my mouth.
That's right, from your mouth. So I am going to add this now. I'm going to hook this on to the bowl, or to my stand mixer. And we are going to work on the wet ingredients. The only wet ingredients you have besides the olive oil for this is eggs. This is 4 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks. So you need 4 whole eggs, and then you need 2 egg yolks. The most important part is you need them to be at room temperature. So if I know I'm going to be making pasta that day, I will set out my eggs in a bowl on the counter until it's time to make the pasta, so that I know that they're truly at room temp. If you go overseas to other countries, like when we were in Italy, like they didn't actually refrigerate their eggs. They got fresh eggs. You can just leave them sit on the counter, especially if they have that coating on them fresh from the chicken. So you don't necessarily need to refrigerate your eggs. American eggs you do, but they'll be fine sitting on the counter. All right, so here's what we're going to do. All you're going to do, Lexi, is you're going to whisk all of our eggs together, okay? Can you do that for me? All right, good job. Basically, you just got to go in there and break up the yolks, and you want them to kind of be really whisked together so that they're all combined when you add them to your mound of flour. And the goal is, now Gordon does his in like 3 steps. So he adds like 1/3 of the yolks, and then he mixes it by hand. And then he adds a little bit more yolk until it's starting to form a ragged dough. And then he punches down the middle and adds the last of the yolk. The way I look at it is, we're using the stand mixer. It's going to do all the work, so we can dump it all in at once if you're using a stand mixer, because the way the dough hook works is it only grabs a little bit at a time. So it'll be kind of like it's slowly incorporating. At least in my mind, that makes sense. So looks like Lexi has gotten this all mixed together. So we are going to add this to our mixing bowl here.
Now let's put this down.
And I'm going to try to pour this. And most of it will land in that hole because we made a nice well in the center. All right, and then I'm going to attach my dough hook. And the key here is you want to start on the lowest speed. So you don't need to mix this super, super high. You want to start this on the lowest speed And basically you're gonna just let it do its thing, and it'll grab flour from the side of the bowl as needed. And so the idea is that you just let it go, and then once it's turned into a dough ball, you can let it knead for about 8 to 10 minutes because you want to really establish the gluten. And then once you've let it knead for 8 to 10 minutes, we are going to wrap it in plastic wrap and let it sit for a half an hour. So we will come back as soon as this dough has mixed together. All right, we are back. Our dough is finished. And you want to see it?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. It'll form a nice yellow ball that's not super tacky and has a little bit of probably coating on flour on the outside. And it's okay if some of the flour is stuck to the side of your bowl. Basically, it's going to keep, you can keep just pushing in, scraping in a little bit of flour at a time as you scrape down the sides, and it's going to take what it needs, and it's going to form its own dough ball, and that's when you know that it's done. And we let this knead for 8 to 10 minutes, and so now all that's left to do is wrap this disc, just kind of form it into a little ball, in plastic wrap and let it sit on the counter. You want to make sure that it's really wrapped tightly in plastic wrap, because if you leave your dough sit out without anything around it, the air is going to make it get crusty on top, and you don't want that because you need it to go through your pasta machine, your pasta roller. So you want to hold this for me?
Yep. Oh, it's so
Is it heavy? Pasta dough is not a super light and fluffy dough. It's not like dumpling dough, is it? So we're going to take our plastic wrap and we're going to take a big square of it, okay? Yep. Put it right down there. Here, let's put it toward the center. And then what are we going to do? We are going to wrap it up, okay? So fold this piece over. Okay. Super tight. Fold this piece over. Oh. Okay. And then we're going to tuck in. So basically, you want to try to get as much of the air out of the plastic wrap as you can so that it's adhering tightly to the dough. So, let's see here. I think, there we go. Okay. Curl up the ends. And there we go. You want to hold it? Mm-hmm. So that is how you make and wrap up your dough. And then we're going to set it over here right on the counter, Lexi. And we are going to let it sit there and rest for at least half an hour. Half an hour is good. We've got an errand to run. So when we get back, we will show you how to roll out the dough. So we'll see you in about a half an hour. All right, we are back. We have let our dough rest for about a half an hour, which is the perfect time that you need. And now we are gonna get ready and roll out our dough. So I'm gonna show you my KitchenAid here. I have the pasta attachment on it. And as you can see, it's just the one that's got the flat roller. And then it's got the numbers on the side, and right now I have the number set to number 1. So when you're rolling out pasta dough, you always start with the thickest setting so that it has a chance, and then as you go, you can increase until it gets thinner and thinner. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of flour, and I am going to sprinkle it on top of the roller, and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to make sure that I sprinkle it because you don't want the dough to stick to your pasta roller. And they actually have a little thing that comes with their attachments, so you can brush all the pasta inside there. And then once you've got that good and spread around on the roller, you are good to start. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna undo the plastic wrap, and we're just gonna break off enough dough that we need for the first time, and then we're gonna cover the rest back up in plastic wrap. Because if you just unwrap the whole thing and let it sit while you're rolling out, it takes a while to roll out your dough. And so your other dough pieces that are sitting there would dry out before you ever got your strips of dough rolled out. So Lexi's gonna help me here. Feel it?
Yeah, I feel it.
Now the dough's gonna feel a little sticky, but that's okay, because we are gonna just tear off a chunk at the end here. Okay?
I can help you.
Oh, I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay.
Once we've got our chunk torn off at the end, I'm gonna let Lexi hold it, and then I am going to finish wrapping up the rest of my dough back. Okay, so I've wrapped up the rest of it. Now, we are gonna take and we are going to just form this into a disc, like so. You kind of want it a long skinny disc, kind of like an oval almost, and you've got to make sure that it's thin enough when you first flatten it out that it will go through your roller and not get stuck. And then once you've done that, you are going to dust it with a light coating of flour, because again, I cannot stress enough that you don't want it to get stuck in your machine. And so you need to make sure you have enough flour on top and dusted your machine with flour so that nothing gets stuck. So,
Yeah.
this is how this is gonna look, okay? And I'm gonna squeeze it out, flatten it a little bit with my hand. We could use a small rolling pin if you wanted.
Yeah, like mine.
So then I'm gonna take, and Lexi, you're gonna help me. So I dusted a little flour on that side. Now you're gonna sprinkle a little flour on that side, okay? Perfect. Now let me see if I can get my camera situated here so you can see what we're doing. So I'm gonna turn my pasta machine on, and I've got it set to number 1, which is the thickest setting, which means that the rollers are the farthest apart from themselves. Like I can see through them. And we're gonna take, and we are just gonna feed this dough through the machine one time. And it's gonna flatten it out a little bit. And you wanna make sure that it didn't stick, and it didn't. So then we're gonna take a little bit of flour, and we're gonna dust this dough again.
That's why I'm making sure it's also.
Rub your hand on this side. And then if it's long enough, you can fold it into thirds like you're folding an envelope, which ours is. So basically, you're just trying to build those layers. So then I folded it in thirds. See, I folded one side over, just like you were gonna fold paper to put inside an envelope. And then you are going to run it through the machine again on 1.
Yeah, make sure it doesn't get stuck.
The idea is that you're building up all the gluten and everything inside there. And so just a little bit of flour, okay? Just a little bit. Okay? That's good. This part can get a little bit of flour everywhere, but that's okay. That's the fun of cooking, right, Lexi?
Yeah, that's the fun of cooking.
All right, so again, I'm gonna fold this,
Up, and then line it through one.
and then I'm gonna turn it sideways, and I'm gonna run it through the machine. This is our 3rd time running it through. I usually do this about 4 or 5 times where I fold it. Just a tiny bit, There you go. Making sure that it's floured up on both sides, and then once I've done that, then I will shape it and start running it through on the smaller settings. So this will probably be the last time that I will run it through. Okay, so at this point now, I'm going to fold it in half. Put a little dusting of flour on each side. We're gonna run it through at number 1, and then we're gonna start lowering our settings until it's thinner and thinner. All right, so it's fully coated in flour. So we're still at number 1. Some more flour back in the machine, and I am just going to run it through on number 1. And then some of the flour has fallen onto our clean counter, so I can just take this and just kind of drag it through. And then I'm going to move the setting on my roller attachment to number 2. Just going to move the rollers just a tiny bit closer together. And then you're going to run it through the machine again. Now the trick is with pasta, each time you keep running it through, it's going to get longer, so you want to make sure you're holding on to part of it. And also, you need to know how thin you need to make it. It depends on what you're making. Raviolis, especially, can be super thin. You just need to remember that it puffs up when it boils in the water or whatever you're making. So if you make it super thick thinking, oh, I need to make this look like a lasagna noodle looks out of the box because they're thick. No, those are different because it's going to puff up. So you want to make sure that it doesn't puff up. So that was at number 2. And then number 3, so I'm going to run it through again. And the nice thing about making your own pasta noodles is that you can cut them to whatever size you need instead of having to try to break them off to fit your pan. We're doing little 8x8 square pans because I'm making one for my mother-in-law and then one for us. And so it doesn't need that much. Yes, that's right. All right, now I'm on setting number 4, and you can see that it's starting to get thinner. And you just let it run through. You feed it through on one side, and then you grab it with your hands on the other side. It takes a bit of practice to get the hang of it. I almost feel like a hand crank might be better, but it's probably more of a workout, but you can control the speed. And I have my mixer on the lowest setting. You don't need it on anything other than just a stir. So it's pretty thin, but I'm gonna run it through one more time. And I'm gonna keep it on number 5, and I'm just gonna run it through one more time. And it'll just press it down ever so slightly. And then I'm good to go. It does. It gets really long, doesn't it? And try to always feed it through in the center. So here's how long it is now. You can see. So what we're going to do is we are going to go lay this on a piece of Reynolds foil, wax paper, whatever you got. You're basically just going to lay it out and sprinkle the top, just not that much. There we go. Just a little bit, and just rub it around. There you go. Yep. So that way, if you need to do multiple layers of noodles, you don't have to keep wasting wax paper and putting, that's enough. You don't have to keep putting like layers of paper in between each one. Just sprinkle it enough that it's not going to stick to the other noodles. And if you did a good job rolling it out, honestly, it shouldn't really stick too much other anything else. So now we are going to repeat that process all over again, basically. So that is how you roll out your pasta dough sheets. Now for us, we're gonna go ahead and dive straight into making the lasagna. If you are making like noodles instead of sheets, like for the lasagna, you could actually freeze the little nests and then pull them out when you want to cook them. The thing to remember about when you're using fresh pasta, especially if you're making like spaghetti or fettuccine or something like that, is it does not cook just like a boxed pasta. That's hard pasta. It takes a lot of time to soften. So fresh pasta can cook in just a couple of minutes of boiling salted water. So once you put it in there, really keep an eye on it and start checking to see how al dente you would like it. So that's it. What do you want to tell everybody, Lexi?
Subscribe and hit the bell if you want to see more Kimmy Warrior Boys.
That's right. Hit the subscribe button, like our video, hit the bell button if you'd like to see more Leukemia Warrior videos. And we will see you next time. Bye.